Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. Welcome, Lloyd. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
No, not a problem. We finally got around to getting you on at the right time. I'll let you introduce yourself so I don't then wreck any of your titles or descriptions about what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Lloyd and my business is VirtualDOO, and we help business owners with teams get out of the day-to-day operations. And before I was doing this, I was in corporate for 20 years. For the first 10 years, I was a programmer, so something I can relate very much to your line of business. Yep. And then for the latter half, I started leading large global teams, and a lot of them predominantly remote. And I think, like many people, during COVID, I had this thinking, the great resignation. What do I want to do? Is this how I want to do things? So it just so happened in my hobby life, I was surfing, and I was running a bit of a surf community and giving daily surf reports. And stay with me here, it does relate to my business. And this grew quite a bit during COVID. And one of the folks that I was talking to one day was a business coach, one of the guys in the sea. And I just said to him, I'm like, my skills of leading teams and overseeing projects and driving process improvement, there must be something I can do as a business that allows me to have my goal of not working the crazy long hours in corporate, but also having that flexibility to work remotely. Because I had this fear that I just didn't want to go back to the brightly lit office full time. I like working remotely. He said to me, well, you know what? You could have a chat with one of my clients. He's running a large e-commerce team, and he's just doing it tough at the moment. So I had a chat with this client, and this is a great guy who's a $20 million business, doing very, very well. And the product's being grown from the ground up. But this guy, he's not had the experience of leading large teams. He's just grown organically. And so running some of these things, like putting structures in place and rhythms of how to run a team. So he's just not running all on adrenaline of the founder, is where this guy needed some help. So basically, I had a chat with him. I knew I could solve his problem, and I quit my job, and I started with this guy on a month-to-month retainer, openly being fractional. If you're familiar, this term fractional is popping up more and more and more. So kind of like a part-time employee, but also being open that I'm planning to serve other people as well. So I started working with this guy and helping him from, instead of him running 16-hour days where he was just scattergunning the teams with tasks and felt like the emergency department or like whack-a-mole, putting rhythms in place so people know what's going to come up. They've got a campaign coming, all of this, so they doesn't feel like chaos anymore. And that was the start of my business. And I took on a couple more clients, fractional, and then eventually I started building a team. And so that's how I am here where I am now, from corporate, from the surf to now running a business.
Interesting journey.
Yeah. So we predominantly serve people with teams of 10 to 30 staff who are where the business owner is very busy, stuck in the weeds. They don't yet have a COO or a head of operations or something like that, and they can have access to my team on a fractional basis.
Okay, so it's more about helping the business owner step out of the day-to-day and then focusing on the business, the direction, strategy, foresight.
You've got it exactly. So I think there's this kind of place where if the business has got a team of less than 5, it's probably not worth it. As in, that business owner might as well run that team themselves. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot they can do to make it easy on themselves if they're busier, learn how to properly delegate and put systems in place. When they got between 5 and 10 staff, if that business owner is still running the team and trying to do the strategy, working in the business and working on it, they're starting to feel the pain. That's the amber zone. But if they've got a team of 10 to 20 and that business owner is trying to sort of run even just the heads of and that's the red zone. If they don't have a director of operations, a COO, a chief of staff, whatever we want to call that, one person that sits between them and the team, they're really going to be working the long hours and doing it tough, and they're not going to be working on their strategy.
Yeah, and there's only so many hats you can wear, and then
totally
wear them well.
And I mean, I'm talking with people with very successful businesses, but they're working on adrenaline. Like by the time we got in there, I mean, I'd say 2/3 of our businesses are, when we're talking to them, their motive is getting away from pain rather than getting closer towards vision. And that pain is they are stuck in the weeds and they can't understand how when they're giving a task to the team that it keeps coming back to them. And so sometimes it's as simple as putting one person between them and the team. Like there's one person they can talk to who's now going to put the systems in place, run the rhythms of the teams, put the dashboards in place. And it's sometimes it's as simple as just having one person to talk to instead of 6 heads of or something like that.
Yep. Do you see that happens in those businesses because they're sort of not focusing on the strategy and just working on the business has been growing organically or whatever they've been doing has been working, so they just stick to doing business as usual?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's hard to see the wood through the trees. It's like it started, they grew, and I think a lot of these business owners, they go, I've got a gap I need to fill. So I know I need to fill, in order to grow, I need to fill more in marketing or I need to fill more here. And I actually think the better way to grow the business is actually look first at yourself as the business owner and go, where am I spending my time? And instead replace that. So this is slightly different thinking. Because if I, as the business owner, can get myself out of that, well, then I can shake the tree for more business. I can do more deals. I can, look and get above it. But they just can't. Yeah, the headlines are they can't see the wood through the trees.
Yep. So, I'm just trying to think about how I want to phrase this. So, normally they would bring in their own COO, so it's an operations officer or someone that runs the day-to-day, but instead they're bringing in yourself or your team to then fill in that as an hour a day or 2 hours a day or whatever that fractional amount may be.
Yeah, so this is the way this is working is they might use us where they've not yet experienced having a COO, a DOO, or something like that. It might mean that they have someone in their team who they think could do it, who's got high potential, who's not yet run those rhythms or knows how to do it exactly. So we can be there for a month-to-month basis, might be 6 to 8 months, it might even be shorter than that, to come in and set the rhythms up in place. And if then they've got someone in their business who they want us to hand over to, fine. Even if they want us to eventually be a part of the recruiting process for a full-timer, we can do that. Yep. So if it looks like, okay, they've grown to such a size now where they've got the budget to take on a full-time operator who will probably want stake or equity in the business, then we can be a part of the interview process for them. And I say a part of it and not all of it because we need them to help define the culture that they want this person to buy into. And we might be able to do second round interviews or even some of the screens.
So you'll be the sort of like technical assessment where they need to assess on the culture and are they a good fit for the team?
Yeah, that's the way it would typically work. So there's a few ways that they would use us. One is we might just be someone as a bridge so that we can eventually help them upskill. It might be sometime in the long term they're going to put in a full-time operator. Or in some cases, the business has just kept growing and they say, just look after that area now. This area is covered. Now let's cover that area and so forth. So the reason it has worked out pretty well is because it's a month-to-month retainer, they're not on the hook for a long term. And we don't have equity. So it's pretty low risk for them. Yep. And another space where we've started to get involved is where businesses are exiting, where they're looking to sell their business. And we've had businesses who are experts in helping people sell their business bring us in to run like an operations audit. So, okay, let's have a kick the tires on here and then present back to the business and say, well, these are the gaps. This is how we would fix it. And then if you want us to come in and actually fix it, great, we'll come in and do that and guide you and work with your team and get it done. Or guess what? Here's what we found. Take it away. Do it yourself. That's how we would do it.
Yeah, so it's a similar model that we offer the fractional CTO where I come in or a product manager will come in and we support non-tech startups and founders. and where that technical they call me up at any time, ask any questions about the product, or can I say this in the meeting? Doesn't make sense, as one thing is quite often what happens. And then the other sections would be we help with the design and direction of their products. But then that is with the view to transition to an internal team. If they're looking for funding, they all have to have their internal team at some point. So I sort of understand that structure, and I can see how that benefits a business, especially in operations. That's critical to anything. Just before we got on, I got to ask, what's DOO? I haven't heard that term because I was in my head you were VirtualDOO.
Yeah, so the DOO is Director of Operations. And, when I looked around for a domain, I looked, can I get COO? No, somebody has got that. So DOO. And, when I started my business, and it's still in my website now, it says fractional integrator service. And I'm not even going to try and explain all of that. I used to spend 10 minutes trying to explain it. Now, fractional is pretty common. Like, people know what fractional is. Integrator, well, that's more of a term that's common in the US that's similar to COO in terms of terminology. But I would spend 10 minutes explaining to people what an integrator is. If you say Director of Operations, it's like the title explains it. So, I got the domain, and that's how I registered my business and so forth. So,
I should have picked that's what it was based on reading your
I
website. But from my head, I was still VirtualDOO for some reason.
Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest areas for improvement that you see with, I'm sure it's going to be different at different levels of businesses, but if you're looking at a small, what sort of, like that early stage, so the 10 employees, what are some of the biggest things that you see that are going wrong?
Yeah, so even 2/3 of our business, by the way, are marketing agencies. So it's very common. It's marketing agencies. Then I'd say the remaining piece is split between e-commerce and then I'd say a pick and mix of anything else, coaching businesses and so forth. And what I see is that a lot of the same things come up over and over, regardless of what the industry is. So the founder is time poor. They're struggling to delegate. We can advise them and coach them how to delegate. But like I was saying earlier, it's like if you can put one person who's good at it between them and the team, that can really make a difference. Hiring the right team and holding them accountable comes up a lot. Because sometimes I'll go into a business and they'll say, where's your culture? Where's it defined? What are your values? And they'll say, it's these 10 things. You go, come on, 10? Really? Like if I talk to your business, are they going to remember 10? Can you tell me what the 10 are off the top of your head? No. And those values, rather than be these soft, fluffy things, should be something that's really meaningful that you as a business, like it really matters to you. Like these are the values that we're going to live by and we're going to hold people accountable by. So a large part of it is hiring the right team that fit the values and having a good look at the team and saying, do they really hit these values? And sometimes we go into a business, if they haven't got those values defined, and I quite often find they haven't, or they are and it's 10 of them, and then we say, what are these values? What really matters? Don't just give me something fluffy. Tell me something. Like one of mine, it's a bit out there. It's heart and humor. So we're very conversational, curious, collaborative. Like we like a conversation, building rapport with people. And we talk to our fellow business owners like they're a dear friend. And I know when I'm hiring someone or I'm having long-running conversations and thinking about hiring someone, whether we're going to work together well, because I'm looking for that empathy, rapport building, conversational style.
Can you have a conversation with them?
Yeah, is it just going to be, we're going to be able to have a joke? Because
you need some personality.
And, operations, there's some crazy things that you see, and especially like when I've come from corporate and then I've come into quite successful businesses that are non-corporate, it feels like the Wild West sometimes, it's a different world. And so you need to have a sense of humor, I think. So you asked me, what are the common things? I see the founders time poor, and so enabling them with a one person that they can go to, holding people accountable, like putting those culture and values in place. If I think of an example of one of my clients who was a stage seller, this simple thing of putting one person between him and the team, he would go out, stand on stage, bring in the people, sell the product, e-commerce education. And then when he comes back to his business, he's got to deal with all the team and the team issues. And that's not just sort of like demanding in terms of decision making. It's also like emotionally exhausting. And because when he came back to his team, he just found that there's just so many things that he couldn't get into the details of. So just being able to get someone in there to really just have a look and find out what's going on. And I remember his case really clearly because he had a leadership team who were all located in the Philippines. And by the way, I use the Philippines a lot. Great place to hire staff. But what he was doing is he was paying all of the leadership folks overtime. And what they were doing is they were deciding to, instead of hand the task over to their team, the leadership team were actually paying themselves overtime and doing the work in their spare time. So this is just a case where you put an operator in there, they've got the bandwidth to just figure out
actually
where...
monitor and check.
Yeah, just go, hang on a minute. Let's stop paying the leadership team overtime and incentivize them to hand stuff over to their team. That's one. I think the other thing that comes up quite a lot, and this is something that we see a lot in the audits, are the lacking of consistent rhythms. So just going back a minute to our classic avatar of a business, as I was saying earlier, is marketing agency e-commerce. And that's less about the business that it is. It's probably more the stereotypical owner is a high visionary. In other words, they're kind of the folks that are going to have big ideas, super creative, really enjoy product, but putting in rhythms, dashboards and feedback loops, that destroys their soul. Like that, doing all the repetitive stuff.
It's not the kind of work they enjoy. That's not why they get up in the morning.
Yeah, they want to be focusing on the product, and I get it. Whereas a lot of the folks I work with, well, they're going to be creative too, but the stuff they enjoy is just getting things sorted. Like, let's execute, let's fix problems. Like they love that stuff. I love that stuff. And so quite often that means putting in a regular cadence of meetings that mean something, not like pointless ones. For example, getting the main people together and understanding what the reds and greens of the area, business areas are, sales numbers, marketing up numbers, incidents coming out of operations, whatever, finance. And measuring something that really matters and then looking at that regularly and saying, oh, okay, well, if it's a red, and when I'm saying a red, if it's less than a certain number, if you start tracking things, you quite quickly figure out what matters and what doesn't matter. If it's a red, okay, that's where we're going to dive deeper and look deeper. So rhythms around, say, team meetings, one-on-ones, feedback loops. So this is about if you're having campaigns or launches, some people have just been running these meetings, these events, and not looking back for process improvement. Whether that's what did we do well? Great, let's do more of that. Like, let's make that our SOP. What didn't work well? Well, the purpose of understanding what didn't work well is not to go and blame someone or kick someone's butt. It's to go, okay, well, let's get the band together and look and see if we can work out how we can change the template of the process such that next time we run an event or a campaign, it's going to be better. So team structure, holding people accountable, rhythms, dashboards, feedback loops. Nearly every single business will find gaps in that space. Super common.
Yep. It's probably something that all businesses, like I said, it's common, but they think they may have it under control as well, but they don't, which is probably another tricky one for the owner that thinks, I'm successful, things are operating, I know what I'm doing, but they know something's wrong, but they don't know where, probably how to finger that red spot.
Yeah, I like that. I think there's two things there that pop up. One is if you get someone from externally to come in and take a look, then they will likely find some things that you didn't find. As you say, they've got a feeling that something's not quite right.
Yep.
And there's an opportunity there. So, a lot of our engagements start with an audit for that purpose. The other thing is sometimes they're aware of what they are sure is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
For example, they've got a team member, and this comes up a lot. They've got a team member and they don't think the team member's performing, but they're just not quite sure if it's them. Like is it me, the founder? Is it how I'm handling them? Have I given them a fair go? So quite often they think there's a problem and they just want that external validation. And so they bring us in to do an audit and they go, yeah, okay, you did see what we saw. Thanks for that. And then that's where we can say, yeah, this is what we would do next. We would
just like that sounding board.
The sounding boards, absolutely. And that is actually another nice way of putting it, because sometimes, as I'm sure you know, being a business owner can be a bit of a lonely sport, and having another person that you can talk to. I know in your business, I think you're a co-founder, right?
Yeah, co-founder. So we're in a bit of a different spot.
Yeah. But a lot of business owners, they're not, it's a one man or one lady band at the top, and they don't really have that person that they can talk to, that safe space where they can go, well, is this the right structure, or are you seeing these problems? And so they can collaboratively work with their director of operations or head of ops or whatever, that one person who can then go out and execute and get it done. So there's a lot in there to soundboard those ideas and then have that person go away and execute on them.
I think that's where we've been lucky, myself and Andrew, my business partner. So there's been two of us from the start, from the uni days, and we're very different. And very, very early on, we knew to separate. All right, I'm very technical. I'll stick to the delivery and solutions and process. He's more, it was like client sales sites. All right, so both of us didn't know what we were doing, but we knew that there's a separation that had to happen to focus on our strengths, but then we can just bounce each other off everything anyway.
What you've just said there is, that's such a good thing you've got going there, because we do work with some co-founders, and some of the time they just want us to be someone to almost hold them both accountable and help them both make a decision. And the other thing you said there that was interesting to me is, I've just finished reading Cameron Herold's The Second in Command, and he describes when you're working with a visionary like the founder and the integrator, or in our case, or COO, that person should be the yin to their yang. Mm-hmm. Like if you were hiring someone as a COO, you don't want to hire someone like you. You want to hire someone who's going to be strong where you're weak. And that's an ideal co-founder relationship as well. Like he's strong in the sales and you're strong, different strengths.
Yeah, it definitely has to be complementary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, if you're hiring someone like you, you're just going to double your problems. Avoid the same things you're going to avoid and just do the same things you're going to do.
Yeah, definitely. That makes perfect sense. And that's pretty much how we run. It's simple in terms of our structure, but a lot of people just can't get someone like that who's got the skills in terms of both being able to lead people, oversee projects and operations, and drive process improvement. And do all those things.
When you're in the weeds, it's always hard to see that. Like you said, you can't see the wood from through the tree. So it does become a challenge, especially if you're on your own. So having that support and something at a fractional basis is an easy way to dip your toe in and get that support or sounding board. And you may not be ready for a full-time commitment for that role either. And you just grow towards it. Yeah.
And that's been the way. I mean, most of our businesses that we work with are into 7 and some even 8 figures now. Mm-hmm. But even then, they've done very well on just a few headcount, and they've just tipped over sort of, now they're in sort of 10 to 20 is where most of the teams that we're working with, and they're like, okay, we've got well to get far here, to get this far. Yep. We don't really want to hire a big expensive COO yet. It's coming, but let's just see what that looks like, how that interaction is going to work, and then let's see if we can even develop some of our own team to step up a bit.
Yeah, it's probably better to develop the team because then they already know the culture, the processes that are in place. They'll have their own views on how things are not working or what's working well as well.
That's so true. And, it's a little bit softer when they bring us in compared to a full-timer, because we can say, look, folks, put your weapons down. We're actually here to work with you. We're only here on a month-to-month retainer. We want to enable you, work with you. When you're bringing in like a full-time COO, head of operations, that does sometimes then cause a little bit of like, well, why didn't they upskill this person with the team? I'm not saying that's a bad move to bring in an outsider, but it's a softer start.
It depends on the business situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then probably that is, it's more confronting bringing in an outsider. But then they'll have probably a similar challenge to yourself when you go in. I'm sure there's a bit of learning time trying to understand. While the problems may be very similar across businesses, there will be that contextual learning time to understand how the business is actually operating and what they're trying to do and how that culture fits. So bringing you in is an easy way to get a jump ahead on that as well, to see, all right, can we bring upskill first?
Yeah, and I mean, that is a very true point. I mean, this is, as you say, if they know they're going to bring in a full-timer, having us, we can fix a lot of the gaps in preparation for a full-timer. We can go, okay, well, we can get your SOPs in order, we can get your hiring and onboarding processes, we can start preparing a list of things that this person's going to work on, like if they're going to take this for the long term, like, hey, these are the gaps. But, one thing that we find when we're going into a business and we just want to get in with a team and clean and working well with everyone as soon as possible, one of the things that's simple that seems to work really, really well is just get started by speaking to each team member and asking them, apart from just, who we are, what we do, just ask each person what's working well and what could be improved. And this really simple thing gets buy-in from the team early on. You'll normally find that 3 out of 5 people will bring the same challenge up, and then you'll know you've got something. And if we go back and put that into our list of priorities and actually get it fixed, it's another way of getting buy-in when we've started the engagement. They're like, well, it's so simple, but we've now managed to get the team on board as well. And we've shown that we're journey. Yeah, and we're listening to them. So many simple things, but it's not always obvious to a business owner that's the way it's going to work. So, yeah. Yeah.
I was going to save my question at the end was going to be, what's something someone could do now if they were trying to look at where the gaps are, and you've just answered it. So you beat me to that one.
Well, I did actually put a small 65-page primer out of what we actually do. So I've got a book. It's on Amazon. I give it away for free. So if someone wants to know like where their gaps are, if they want to try and do it themselves, they're welcome to go to my website and download that. And
we'll put those links in the show notes. And
so that's
probably a good exercise to go through.
Yeah, that's virtualdoo.com/book. They can just download the PDF and take it away, and that lets them know where they might be if they want to try and do it themselves, especially if they've got a smaller size team. Then that's a great place for them to start. Yeah.
I can probably see that sort of like that soft entry into bringing someone in, like bring yourselves in first, and instead of bringing someone from scratch and give them a game plan to work towards. That's probably going to alleviate a lot of the challenges that you hear about when a new head of or a chief of comes into any business. They want to shake things up and put their mark and do things their way. Yeah. That's probably going to avoid that problem, which is then going to rustle more feathers and create more problems potentially.
Yeah, and I think that's why the messaging is important, and I've said put your weapons down and we're here to work. I mean, we are quite often going to make some changes, but our real goal is to work with the team to make those changes. And we're not trying to be secretive about anything. We're trying to be as transparent as we can and say, look, okay, guys, where's your culture defined? Right, well, now we've worked with you and your founder or your owners have said, these are the things that really matter to them and these are the things we're going to live by. These are really going to be the things we're going to start holding people accountable to. We're just being open, You'll soon, the people will know in the team whether they belong or they don't belong. It's that right people, right seats. And so that's somewhere where by putting that foundation in, that's when we can help them for preparing for that new business, the new COO to come in, and the culture's clearly defined and the team are they know what the rules are. They know how the culture is defined.
Yeah, everyone's on the same page. They know what the rules of the game are, what the playing field looks like, and what the end state is. It's very important to get everyone aligned, because the initiatives won't go ahead then if you don't have everyone aligned to the same goals, moving in the same direction.
Yeah. You did ask me a minute ago, like, what's something that they can do now? I've got a really simple exercise I'd love to share. It's so simple.
Yeah.
So just in terms of a busy business owner, the one simple exercise I really like is the task audit. And there's loads of things written about a task audit out there, but this is really simple. I just say, open a Google Sheet on your desktop. Leave it open. If you ask a busy business owner to do something for them that's going to take any time, it will probably get pushed back. So I say, leave this Google Sheet open, or whatever it is, Excel, and just as you're going through the week, keep adding all of your tasks to this sheet. Just as it comes up, oh, there's another thing I do. Oh, there's another thing I do. And then over the course of about a month, you're going to look back at that and go, does this thing that I've been doing, does this really need to be me? Is there a good reason why I can't just give this to someone else in the team? If it's give this to a VA or an EA or a PA, or give this to someone in delivery to run with. And it's a classic not being able to see the wood through the trees example. When you finally got it on paper and you look at it, it helps people make that decision. And another way to look at that is the cost. So if you look at the cost of your own time, so let's just say for a small business owner, I'm just going to make up a simple number, but let's just say they're paying themselves $100,000 a year. Really simple, right? And if you take their income and divide it by 2,000, that's a crude hourly rate. So that becomes, say, $50 an hour. Now, the buyback rate, which is the rate of which they can employ someone else to do something, is about a quarter of that. It's just crude numbers. So that's like $12.50 an hour. So if you went through that list of everything and was like, this is a task that I could pay someone for $12.50 an hour VA to do that for me, it's an absolute no-brainer. Why on earth was I ever doing it? And then you can go through, obviously, if you're a successful business owner who's been highly remunerated and you've got your buyback rate cleared, which is, 2,000 divided by 4, then it becomes really clear to you, like, why on earth was I doing that thing myself when I could have given that to someone else to do?
That's a very simple strategy.
Yeah, simple, but sometimes they just need to see it.
Yeah, it's hard when you're working in the business.
Yeah.
In the keyword there, yeah.
And just having someone hold you accountable and question you and say, look, we've seen this. This is what you're showing. Like, really smart business owners, but just having someone hold them accountable and say, look, this is what the data is telling us. This is what we should perhaps do. Yeah.
So probably the last thing we'll touch on is the sort of like accountability. So once you come in or you bring someone in and they start putting, these are the SOPs that we're going to follow, and if they're implementing systems, how do you then keep everyone accountable or monitor that things are working in the new way that they should be?
If it's one of the things that a business owner can do that's really simple for, say, SOPs, is give every SOP an owner, and that ownership's really important. So even if this is with your VAs in the Philippines or something like that, there's a difference that between accountability and responsibility. And so it might be that an SOP, there might be a number of people that can run that process. That's fine. But I just want one name. I want one name that I can put against that process, which is the accountable owner. So that means that accountable owner is that one person who will keep that process updated. That is the person that, if they're going to go on holiday, they're going to make sure someone still runs that process. So it's really about being really clear on where the ownership is. And when we look at org charts, it's being really clear on who owns what. So you can say, right, this person looks after marketing, and be really clear on the kind of things that they own. This person looks after sales. These are the things that they own, and so forth. And of course, we want people to collaborate. It's not to say we're going to stop any collaboration people. We just want to be really clear that there's one person, the unfortunate expression is one throat to choke. It's like, who is this with? Like, who is it?
Yep.
And if there's any confusion, or if it's something that they think is going to require multiple people to make a decision, then that's where they can go up to that director of operations or COO and say, okay, we need someone, a tiebreaker here, who can help us work this out, where this sits, how's it going to get done, and they can then facilitate getting a decision made.
Okay. And that all makes sense once you hear it.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just being brought to attention.
Accountability is... It's not always easy to get that right. There's an expression I like, sunlight is the best disinfectant. It's like when you start putting numbers to things, in dashboards like sales numbers and marketing numbers and so forth, and who's responsible for what, we can be having open conversations about, okay, what do we need to do if this is a red? What support do you need to make that a green? Do you need investment? Do you need more staff? Do we need to work through the process together? And then, finally, if we've given them all the support they need, we then really need to think, well, are they the right person? If it's really not getting somewhere. But yeah, accountability is a large part of it. And the thing is, if you've been really good at hiring the right people who fit in your culture, and then you've been really good at hiring in terms of not only the culture is the first piece, but then that second piece of, do they get it, do they want it, and do they have the skill and the capacity to do it? When those two things are aligned, those people are just so easy to manage. Like, that's just the easy part. But so often we go in there, and the founder probably knows it. There's someone in their team, and they're a bad apple, and they've been trying to just not deal with the issue. It might be because they've been an employee there since day one. They're putting up with a bit of toxicity or underperformance because they know they can do the work. And sometimes they just need someone to come in, put the processes in place, and say to them, look, we're going to want to move this person on, or we're going to start wanting to hold this person accountable. And if it means that they're not going to respond well to that, then it means, unfortunately, they're going to have to go. And it's just the reality. And sometimes the business owner themselves needs to be held accountable to make that, to say, look, we need to move this person on. So it's hard, but...
I'll tell you, sometimes that pressure, putting that pressure on the employee will make them want to leave themselves potentially too. So it might fix the problem on its own.
Yeah, and it does a lot for the business as well, actually. Like, if you've got one toxic employee... I can think of a huge e-commerce we were working with, and they had a designer who was very, very talented at that work, super talented, but just played really badly with everybody else, finger pointing and blaming other people, then not showing up to the meetings where they needed to collaborate, always missing deadlines. And I'd give people a fair go, and, we'd be taking track of, okay, what was the behaviour that we saw? What was their explanation of it, and so forth? But when there's been a few repeats, we're like, hey, look, we're down to incident number 3 in 2 weeks now. This is what you said. This is what we saw. We're on to number 3 now. Having some really frank, open conversations with them. Quite often they'll just, as you say, they'll just move on themselves. And if they don't, when we eventually do let them go, it's a relief for the rest of the team. And if you don't deal with it, it actually causes this negative energy in the team where they're like, why is so-and-so getting away with that? Well, maybe I'll just start behaving like that if that's the way this team is going. Yeah, one bad apple and spoil the whole lot, hey?
Yep, it's the same for a reason.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great to talk to you, Lloyd. If anyone wants to reach out, how can they do that?
Yeah, just so head to my website, virtualdoo.com. And as I said earlier, they're very welcome to download my book, virtualdoo.com/book.
Yep.
And even though I mainly work with people with teams of really about 7 to 30 is our sweet spot, if they have a team less than that and they just want to bounce something off me, I'm always open for a bit of friendly networking or bouncing ideas around. So, yeah, feel free to reach out.
Well, hopefully we'll put the details in the show notes, and hopefully someone reaches out if they've got a hand, or if not, the tips you gave earlier, which you beat me to the question at the end of the episode. I'm sure there's some tips there that someone can do a little quicker self-assessment, or that monthly spreadsheet, and just monitor their tasks and their effort, and then that might bring up some new things they didn't know about, and then prompt a conversation with yourself.
I'd love to know that happens. That'd be great. Thanks a lot, Anthony.
Cool. No worries. Thank you for your time. It's been great.